Holy crap, Janet. Janet Prozewitz for Supreme Court.
Damn it, Janet, I love you. Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am your host, Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair, and we have Joe Zepecki here for one more segment, and Greg Bach here for the rest of the show. And we are still talking about last night, and we haven't even touched on the down-ballot races. We touched a little bit on the state Senate race, which has gone to Dan Knodel, the Republican, and does mean that the Senate will have a supermajority. Unclear how much of that power they will use and how effective they will be with it. But beyond that, all three of the mayor's races that we at Civic Media last night were watching, all three incumbents won. And I know, I think in descending order, Racine was probably the widest margin, and then Satya Rhodes, I think he was like 57 to 44.
What did Satya get?
I think that was closer. I think that was like 55-45, but it was also still pretty wide. And then I had heard that the Green Bay mayoral race was going to be really close, but even that was about 4 points, right?
Yeah, 52-48.
And so in that, I had not kept my finger on the pulse of that one as much, but that ended up having a lot of spending, right?
Yes. Listen, all of these local races are getting more and more. It's most pronounced in the state Supreme Court race, but you also had, a lot of TV ads in the Racine race. Green Bay, they were up on TV for a long time. These races matter. Local control matters. And so congratulations to mayors Mason, Genrich, and Satya Rhodes Conway.
Yep.
Sorry,
Mason won with 2,200 votes, which is good. And I'm surprised. Henry Perez, I won't lie. When I left Racine, he was just coming onto the scene, and I never saw him as someone who was shooting for mayor. So
really,
yeah. I mean, he was, he I don't have a ton of opinions on him. He was a nice guy when I knew him, and I'm not saying he's not now. I'm just saying he never struck me as, I'm going to run for mayor. And when I saw his name on a yard sign, I was like, okay, all right. And yeah, Corey, I mean, it was not surprising. I mean, I have a friend who ran in the primary and he did not make it. And when Corey made it, I was like, all right.
It's probably going to be.
Yeah.
Well, we would love to hear from you as far as what local races, whether it was for alderman or school board, that you are excited about or disappointed by. 844-967-2789. Shoot us a text or give us a call at 844-967-2789 of some of the other down ballot races in your neck of the woods that you're very excited about or disappointed by. But I wanted to talk briefly because I had felt fairly strongly about these statewide referendums, both in the subject matter of them, but also I have very mixed feelings because on the one hand, it feels like I am jealous when I look at Michigan, who had a direct referenda that was organized by the people to be on the ballot 5 years ago for fair maps. Last year for abortion, both passed. Now Michigan has fairer maps and for now is democratically held. They also have safe access to abortion. So on this one hand, I see the ability of what binding direct referendums can be and feel like, ooh, I want that. And then on the other hand, I see these confusing ass questions on complex issues and people, the amount of questions I got in my DMs and inbox of, can you please explain this to me? I went to law school and but I have people who are lawyers who are like, I don't even understand the way it was written because it was written so poorly that people don't know what they're actually voting on. And then it passes. It passes overwhelmingly. And so I don't know where I fall on it, but I feel like at least this morning, I kind of feel like, there has to be a better way to make decisions on something that is as consequential as defendants' rights.
I mean, there's been saying that since, I mean, I remember when I was working on the campaign for marriage equality, and there's the question when we're fighting for marriage equality and we say vote no, people are like, why am I voting no for marriage? No, you okay,
Yeah.
we sit you down. It's just about, it's every time it's always a confusing language being written to screw us up. Always. That's how they win.
I think it was former President Bush who said, if we, I'm pulling them all out today. If we don't teach our children to learn good, how will they know to read? And I don't know why that just popped into my head. But
if you don't, I will also quote him, fool me once. Fool me twice.
You can't get fooled again.
You can't get fooled again, people.
I think ballot referenda should be written at a 4th grade reading level.
Yes.
For reasons of accessibility. There's a reason that the USA Today, the most widely read newspaper in America, to the extent anybody reads newspapers anymore, is written at a 4th grade reading level. This should be simple enough that you know what's at stake.
At the very least for the legislators to understand too, because
and I think there's that. Yes, totally on board with the simple language of it, but also some identifier of what is binding and what is not.
Yeah.
Like looking through the 4 for Milwaukee County, there was 4 different questions. 2 were constitutional amendments that had some teeth. 2 were non-binding. There was no identifier.
One of them's already state law.
One's already state law. And they all looked exactly the same. And even when you look up your ballot on My Vote, like say you do your due diligence and you look up your ballot, it's not like the ballot looks any different when you look it up ahead of time. You still have to go do the extra research to be like, what am I answering?
Mm-hmm.
What ramifications does this have? And granted, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, WPR, we've certainly talked about it. And so there was news articles about it, but it feels like such an injustice to have it be so poorly written and also not tell you what will change something and what will not. What's just gauging your popularity on it.
Do you know we need a binding referendum on the next ballot talking about the language of binding and non-binding referendums on ballots, and they need to be written at a 4th grade level. I've solved the problem. You're welcome. I'm out.
But I know you're joking right now, but I guess, is that the only solution to change how we do this? Is it would have to go through a legislative process of making a law about how we make referenda? Because this doesn't feel
fair.
I don't know if fair. It just feels
shady.
It feels like a gimmick. It feels shady. It doesn't feel like direct democracy and the chances that we sometimes get to actually vote on something that matters.
I don't know this. I'm speculating.
Okay.
But my suspicion is that the way that referenda is governed in Wisconsin was part of a package of progressive era reforms a very long time ago. Like Wisconsin was the first state in the country to have partisan, like the primary system. And my guess is that good government folks who wanted a more democratic democratic system set this up 90 some years ago. And in the information environment in which we live and the sort of polarized world that our politics operates in, good intentions are now being weaponized. And that's the takeaway, right?
Yeah.
Like conservatives controlled the pen. They held the pen on these and they chose them to write them the way that they did. So there's always implications that you don't see coming.
844-967-2789. Your reactions to last night's elections. Bob from Waukesha joining us. What do you want to say, Bob?
This is for Joe. Now, I wasn't aware of this, but because the Republicans have a super majority, they could repeal Janet Posewich off the bench. Is that true? And if they can do that, could we vote on that? How does that work?
Yeah, great question, Bob. Thanks for calling in today. They technically have the votes to do an impeachment of any state constitutional officer, anyone appointed within the Evers administration. You know, you can't impeach a public citizen, right? You have to impeach an office holder or a government official. They have the votes. They have 22 Republicans, which is what it would take, a 2/3 majority to impeach an official like Judge Protasewicz, soon to be Justice Protasewicz. That would not mean that it was all over and done. Then the state assembly would have to vote on it. It would take a majority in the state assembly. I do not believe that that is going to happen, because if they do and they remove her or any other official from office, the governor would have the ability to appoint the replacement. So I understand that there are people who are concerned. We need to be on the lookout for this, but I don't necessarily, I'm not taking it as fait accompli that 22 Senate Republicans are going to go along with this. I said it in the first hour. I'll say it again. I am cautiously optimistic that Republicans will heed what the people of Wisconsin are saying, which is they want an end to brinksmanship and extreme politics. They want people to get stuff done. But a great question, Bob.
I can't imagine anything that would tick off 1.8 million Wisconsinites more than trying to get rid of the woman who was just resoundingly elected.
Well, and that's the thing, is this is all part of the same story, which is there is a creeping threat in this country where there are some partisan public officials who don't want the people to decide, who are it is sort of a creeping threat of, call it proto-authoritarianism, fascism, choose your word, but like, it is not the will of the people when the Tennessee legislature tries to expel 3 members for protesting, when this happens all the time, and Republicans claim to care about protecting constitutionally protected speech. The big lie, trying to overturn the will of the people. It is a bad look. And I think the reason I'm cautiously optimistic, Republicans recognize that all of this is accruing to their detriment here in Wisconsin, which is why they have lost 14 of the last 17 statewide elections.
Which is a stellar number.
Yeah. And I'm a glass half full guy, though.
You are. Hearts for days.
All right. Well, we only have a minute left. We have to let Joe Zepecki get on with his media tour for the day. Any last words before we let you go?
Great job, Wisconsin. Way to give a damn, as Kristen Bry says.
Whoa. Language.
Yeah. And everybody get a better night's sleep tonight than they did last night.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for being here. Great friend of the show, Joe Zepecki. Greg Bach will still be here when we're back. Jane Matnair will still be here when we're back. And so will I, Kristen Bry. That rhymed. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
This is so good.
Why are you eating so much popcorn?
Well, I'm making a difference for Wisconsin schools, and I was able to easily shop online.
I mean, it does look yummy.
OMG, you've got to try this cheddar jalapeno.
It is good.
Oh, and I ordered a bunch of other gourmet flavors, chocolate delight, cookies and cream, and even dill pickle, delivered to my door. And I help Wisconsin schools in the process. Go to the Wisconsin Popcorn Shop at civicmedia.us/shop. That's civicmedia.us/shop. And order now. The shop closes April 10th.
If you're living with chronic pain and have yet to find relief, Select Pain Care of Milwaukee may be able to help. Select Pain Care specializes in helping those that have had their pain for more than 6 months and have tried 3 or more healthcare providers with minimal relief. Find out if Select Pain Care can help you. Call 414-939-5045. That's 414-939-5045. Or log on at selectpaincare.com.
Missed your favorite show live on air? It's easy to find what you enjoy wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And we're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app. You are listening to your local Civic Media radio station on air. Thank you. Did you know we are always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app too? And if you miss a show or game, find it wherever you get your podcasts or on our website, civicmedia.us.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Highs level off around 70 this afternoon under partly cloudy skies. Winds out of the southwest 20 to 30 miles an hour. Lows dip down to about 29 tonight, mainly clear. Highs around 48 tomorrow, ample sunshine expected. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times Friday, with daytime highs approaching 46. 57 Saturday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 64 degrees.
The Shaw 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM, Wisconsin's home for rational talk radio.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair, and he is Greg Bach. Take a deep breath. That was a very fun first hour and segment. I truly feel like we could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
And maybe we still can. If people would like to keep talking about it, we would love to hear from you as far as your takeaways from last night. Even just how you're feeling as far as, is it relief? Is it nervousness? Because it's, there's just another day that we have to keep staying vigilant as far as understanding what's coming around the pipe. We obviously have a budget around the corner. The first Joint Finance Committee public hearing is today in Waukesha. So as far as politics doesn't end, governing doesn't end.
Elections never end.
But, I was trying to find it so I could actually quote it. But the friend of the show, CJ Safer, who's a Republican conservative, and he's been on the show a couple times, and he tweeted out last night, which I totally get, right? Like, in the same way, when you really believe in something and you're angry when your side loses. And he had said something, I couldn't find the tweet right now, but basically, like, he's exhausted and he was pissed. And what he didn't understand, which I thought was an interesting question, is that back in 2010, basically when the suburbs of Milwaukee voted so overwhelmingly for Scott Walker and then voted for him not to get repealed or impeached, recalled, one of those words. He's like, what has happened? And I think that will be a question that the Republican Party has to ask themselves. It's like, because Act 10 is on the slate of things that could get challenged in this new court, right? And he's like, and he was just saying, he's like, I don't understand what's changed in the suburbs to actively vote against something that you voted for 10-ish years ago.
I can make an answer for that.
Yeah, I don't think we have the answer, but it was just an interesting question.
Well, I think the thing is that if you look at Scott Walker's candidacy, it's 2 years after Barack Obama. That is the uprise of the Tea Party, a very reactionary group of individuals who got weaponized by big money. And when someone like Scott Walker can speak those very simple ideas on
at a fourth grade reading level,
exactly, yeah, that's being nice. They're going to vote for him. And then the recall, you had in him, once again, a candidate in Tom Barrett who didn't really seem like he wanted to be governor, but was, as we now know, was kind of pushed by national politics to do that. So a recall is just pushing it harder. So the fact that he's looking at what happened in 2010, I think we are balancing the ship. I think we're steadying the course. I think it's taken a long time. As Joe said, a big steamer, you can't just stop it. You got to move the course slowly, and I think people are doing that.
844-967-2789. You can call or text, check in about last night's election. Peter from Merton, thank you so much for calling. Peter, what do you want to say?
Yeah, first thing I want to know is I didn't see any polls about this election ahead of time other than for the primary. I mean, it was real shocking to win by, I think it was 200,000 votes, which is tremendous. And the second question I had was, especially here in Western Waukesha County, the school boards, I mean, just pushing the fact that they were Republicans or conservatives for school boards. And I thought school boards were about educating children, not about politics. So just throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the call, Peter. And I was equally surprised, if I'm being totally honest, that there was no other published public polling. I know the campaigns themselves certainly spent money on tons of internal polling. I would only hear through friends and friends of friends of kind of like whose poll said what. And I think Joe said in the first hour, he said there was maybe one like a month ago that had a 9-point lead for Janet, but most of them were showing 2 or 4. And so, but I and maybe that's a question we can ask our good friend Charles Franklin, as far as what was the decision behind, in comparison to the fall midterm election, when it felt like we had a poll, they were publishing a poll every 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. And we know that because then we would spend a segment or more talking about what the poll said.
Yeah.
And I was surprised. I was surprised that there was not, for such a big race, that there was so much national attention, that there was not more public polling that was then published in the media for the average person to look at and analyze. And I totally agree with you on the school board stuff. And this is now the 3rd cycle we've seen as far as Moms for Liberty and the amount of a conservative push trying to put more ideological leaning, conservative leaning people on school boards. And I talked about this a little bit last year. I think I made a video about it, as far as it's not the first time this has happened, as far as the ebbs and flows of like starting at the school board level, especially with conservative ideas, because it's so local and it's so accessible as far as being able to, and we've seen that, whether it's masks, CRT, anti-LGBTQ, like it's accessible to go to your school board meeting in a way that going to Madison, let alone DC, doesn't always feel like. And so it can take root, even though, but also when I was studying this, it often goes back to an equilibrium, because when you're at the school board level, you actually have to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't
accountable.
Yes, you can't. It's not like the legislature where you can just, and pontificate on and like release press releases and statements on like what happened and your feelings about it. Like you actually have to make sure teachers get paid and that the budget is going to work and like school lunches are there. And like as soon as that stops happening because you elect inept people, they're not going to be in office for very long. So we got to go to another break. We're going to keep talking about it. If you have thoughts, reactions, feelings about yesterday's election, especially anything local that happened in your part of the state, 844-967-2789. We'd love to hear you on the phone. We'll also read your texts. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
A progressive voice for rural Wisconsin. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
CBS News brief. Students at 200 colleges and high schools around the country are walking out today to call for tougher gun laws.
We've gone to the committee hearings on a bunch of bad gun laws, honestly, and we don't feel like our voices are getting heard.
Catherine Allen is a student at Florida State. Multiple deaths reported in southeastern Missouri after a tornado caused heavy damage. CBS's Jared Hill.
4 storms are expected to hammer parts of the Midwest and South in the coming days, hitting the same parts of the country where possibly dozens of tornadoes killed at least 32 people in Iowa, Illinois, and Arkansas.
Well, CBS's Robert Costa on the potential legal peril for Donald Trump far beyond the New York felony case.
He is being investigated right now for whether he obstructed the return of those classified records to the federal government. That's the point of alarm among some Trump associates at this moment.
CBS News Brief. I'm Steve Kathan.
The Shaw 101 FM, Franklin's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
For Civic Media, I'm Jane Matnair. Here's what you need to know. More than 1.7 million Wisconsinites turned out for yesterday's race for the state Supreme Court, breaking the previous record high for a spring election without a presidential primary. Liberal-backed Judge Janet Protasewicz beat former Justice Dan Kelly 55 to 44%. This is Kelly's second election loss in a row after he was appointed to the Supreme Court by former Governor Scott Walker in 2016. Kelly lost to Jill Karofsky in 2020 by 11 points. Among the lawsuits that could come before the court: abortion rights, gerrymandered maps, Wisconsin's right to work law, and private school voucher programs. In Wisconsin's 8th State Senate District, Republican Dan Knodel defeating Jody Habasinick in 50.9 to 49.1%. That's with 99% of the ballots counted. I'm Jane Natnair. This is Civic Media News.
Civic Media promised you something big to celebrate our new and still growing network of radio stations. When we announced the one-day $1 million advertising giveaway for Wisconsin businesses, you responded.
Just wanted to echo your sentiments about the advertising. That's really a cool deal and really remarkable.
$1 million of free advertising. Now, if you missed this chance to work with our team, go to civicmedia.us and click on the sponsorship tab. One of our local sales pros will get right back to you. civicmedia.us and sponsorship.
This is so good.
Why are you eating so much popcorn?
Well, I'm making a difference for Wisconsin schools, and I was able to easily shop online.
I mean, it does look yummy.
OMG, you've got to try this cheddar jalapeno.
It is good.
Oh, and I ordered a bunch of other gourmet flavors, chocolate delight, cookies and cream, and even dill pickle, delivered to my door. And I help Wisconsin schools in the process. Go to the Wisconsin Popcorn Shop at civicmedia.us/shop. That's civicmedia.us/shop. And order now. The shop closes April 10th.
If you're grilling this weekend, be sure to have plenty of Village Hearth buns on hand. Fancy equipment and secret sauces are great, but once you've mastered the basics, it's all about the bun. Your perfectly grilled burgers and hot dogs deserve the best, and with several varieties to choose from, including unsliced old-fashioned, classic white or wheat, country potato, and mini sliders, the bakers of Village Hearth have the buns your family will love. Village Hearth buns, locally baked and delivered fresh daily.
This is Pat Greightlow from Up North News Radio. On the air, online, or on demand, make it a point to catch the first word on Wisconsin news, sports, and more weekday mornings from 6 to 8 all across the stations of the Civic Media Radio Network.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Batnair, and he is Greg Bach, who just you wanted to show off your Bob Ross shirt a little bit more?
Heck yeah. It's Bob Ross.
Pretty good.
I love Bob Ross.
Is it Owen Wilson that's going to play Bob Ross in the new?
Yep.
Who's directing it?
He's playing a Bob Ross inspired character. It's
yeah.
called Paint, but he looks like Bob Ross. He talks like Bob Ross, but it's not Bob Ross because I'm sure they're like, yeah, you can use his name. Pay us.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not. He's got a really weird name too. Like it's very of this movie, if you ask me. But yeah, I'll probably go see. I'll see it when it's on streaming. That's fine.
Will you go see the new Barbie movie?
Absolutely.
Have you seen the trailer for the Barbie movie that dropped yesterday?
I have not.
Jane,
it looks hilarious.
It looks great. I mean, the fact that Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig wrote it and she's directing, and the cast, I made people watch it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go see it, and we're gonna go see John Wick 4 this weekend. I can't wait.
There's a lot of good movies coming out. We're not in the no sour haha fun time power hour yet, but we started there. So
his name carries him is Carl Nargle. It's
a good name.
Yeah.
It's a good name. All right. Well, I want to have room for people who want to keep talking about the election because obviously there's still a lot to unpack. And I think to a certain extent, questions, maybe there was no answers. Like, there was one answer as far as who won or who didn't. But as far as where we go from here, certainly there is a lot to be yet to be seen. You know what was interesting? So when we got at 9 p.m. last night, I jumped on a Instagram Live with friend of the show, Dan Schaefer.
I watched.
Nice. And he made, because like there is now this in this time period, because Janet Protasiewicz does not get inaugurated take the bench until August 1st. And he ended last night on a personal note, he being Dan Schaefer, on how this, when he writes, he tries to make his writing about the things at hand and not about, it's not about him. But he told a story, and I think it's indicative of saying, like, there's a lot that can still happen in the next time period while there is still a 4-3 majority of a conservative court, including, if you think back to 2020, Dan Kelly lost handedly for the first time. And within 2 weeks, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, even though he was on his way out, when they had a 5-2 majority.
Yeah.
And Hagedorn voted with the liberals to knock down the stay-at-home order. And within that same, I think 2 days prior, Dan said that he and his wife had just found out that she was pregnant with their second child. And that hurt so badly to know that the Wisconsin Supreme Court had just disregarded the safe and healthy, like the safety and the health of so many people in Wisconsin, including people who did not know we didn't have a vaccine. We didn't know the ramifications of what COVID was going to do. It was still, if you think about it now in context, middle of April was such a short period of when it started to how long we dealt with,
I mean,
safety issues.
Yeah.
And so for him, and so I think there is something to be said as far as there's still a 4-3 conservative majority until August. Nothing has changed overnight.
No. Yeah.
So they can still pull off some shenanigans.
Depending on what lands in their lap, as far as for them to make a decision on before August. And I don't know what their docket looks like, but it's just, this is not an overnight change.
No, not at all. Not at all.
844-967-2789. Taking your calls and your texts for your reactions after last night's election. 920 checking in Winnebago County. I was disappointed. Conservative Scott Wald, who brought a firearm into a courtroom, beat Lakeisha Haas for circuit judge. Also, the more conservative mayoral candidate in Oshkosh won, which really shows how unappealing Dan Kelly was. But at least Winnebago County and the whole of Fox Valley went for Janet.
I will say this. In Dan Kelly's concession speech, he only said Constitution 4 times. And I want to shout out to my friend Nina Martinez in Madison, who won her.
Oh, I know her. She ran for something?
She ran for
she's
alder
a comedian.
person. She's an older woman. She's an older woman in Madison. She's the first trans older woman. However she wants to be the title, I don't care, but I love her. She won last night. And also in Kenosha, even though I don't have children, I have no children and then therefore none in school, beat back a very right-leaning school board person who
candidate.
Thank you. God, I don't know what's wrong with me today.
None of us slept much last night.
Yeah. Beat him back. Who was like, I'll ban books. I will, we will not teach CRT. We will not do all. And there's just thank you, Kenosha, for the good work.
I love this text from the 414. I was so nervous yesterday. I made 2 dinners.
What were they?
We'll have to find out.
Text back. We want to know what were the 2 dinners. Was one Mexican and one like a casserole? How different were the 2 dinners? Did you mix ingredients and just use what you had? I have so many more questions. If
that
you're
will be
throw
the 1 o'clock hour.
That's the 1 o'clock hour. What did you make for dinner last night with your 2 meals?
And
but that is a great text.
And the texter also says, I hope that years of Walker Voss being lied to, 1849 ban, PFAS, and the growing awareness that Wisconsin GOP only caters to billionaires may finally be changing minds. 844-967-2789. We'd love to hear from you too. Text or call that easy number.
It's just, you think about it. A billionaire walked into this state and tried to become our governor, and we said no. Those 3, yes, there is work to do. Can't sit around, eat cake, and party too long, but
it's encouraging. It feels hopeful, and it's certainly, I think what Joe was saying as far as cannot loosen up or lighten up. And certainly this show's still going to be here every day. Still going to make videos every day. I feel like that's on the docket this afternoon, is to go try to summarize what Joe said as far as what does a 2/3 majority in the Senate actually mean? Because I think a lot of people have that top of mind. But as far as at least capitalizing on the momentum and the engagement and people feeling like we're turning things around ever so slowly and trying to reject extremism, because it's not that we can't compromise. And I think that's the thing. It's like continuing to try to find the conversations where you're center right, you're center left. And that's why I kind of had asked, like, what do Democrats do from now? Because I don't think you can just take wins and run so far to the left, as you have an opportunity to continue to try to ingratiate yourself to people who have been Republicans their entire lives, but they're a person without a party.
Well,
and so like bringing them into the conversation, having conversations around like what is best for the most amount of people, which is what the Wisconsin idea is, and having that be the starting point, I think is the best place that we can go.
And that's kind of what I said in the other segment. It was like, of those 1.8 million of those who voted for Janet, they weren't all Democrats. They were Republicans who didn't want Dan Kelly. And so, all right, cool. Come on over. Let's have a cup of coffee and talk. Let's chat. I'll bring you bring in Entenmann's. I'll bring the Sanka. It's the oldest thing I've said today.
844-967-2789, the number to call and or text. Checking out with your reactions from last night's election. Friend of the show, here to talk about the Wauwatosa School Board race, Luann Bird. Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin.
Luann Bird is the word.
Hi. Have you heard about the bird?
How are you feeling this morning, Luann?
I have not stopped smiling since I got up.
Are you simply taking
It's been
flight?
amazing. I am. In fact, I flew around Wauwatosa to gather up the signs that I put out because my grandkids go there. I don't
There
go
you
there,
go.
but my grandkids do. And so I'm not sure if you and your listeners are familiar, but 3 dads, Tosa dads, jumped into that race early on, and it stemmed after that Moms for Liberty group was protesting their human growth and development curriculum. And so there were some scary things going on in Tosa. And these 3 dads were pretty clearly aligned with the Republican Party. Their literature looked the same. They even put out attack ads at the end. So these 3 women that were running independently ended up beating these guys and handily, 2-1. So it was really a testament to, I think, the grassroots work that the First Sisters have been doing in Tosa, and Representative Robin Vining, and just some really, hardworking people there to beat that back was phenomenal, I thought.
That is phenomenal.
So
I had heard a
it
little
was
bit about that
interesting.
race, as far as it was like 3 guys who were running together. And I think Tosa has been a battleground.
Yes, it has been.
As far as, Robin Vining flipped that seat 2018, 2020? When did she flip that, Luann?
Yep. Oh gosh. Good question.
As I know,
She's
time
been, I
everything
think, on her
blends
third
together. But
term, so at
Robin
least
flipped it. It was a seat that was so dangerous that in the new maps, they basically had to rearrange that part of the state because they saw that it was getting more and more blue. And I think people were nervous of like the conversations that we're having around these 3 dads, super conservative, ideological on the school board, and the fact that they rejected that is great.
It is great. I'm really proud of the people in Tosa because my grandkids go there, and I'm nervous about that. So that's good news. I have another piece of good news. I knocked on a lot of doors in Hales Corners and in Greenfield for Janet and for our good friend Chris Porterfield, who unfortunately didn't pull it off last night. He's just not well known enough in this area. But we knocked on a lot of doors, and I had a goal in my mind to flip Hales Corners, and I'm happy to tell you we did.
Yeah,
we flipped Hales Corners for Janet.
I mean, the numbers coming out.
5 votes.
Yeah, those numbers coming out of traditional Republican strongholds are. I mean, I'm still happy about Waukesha City. County is a thing, but the city. Thank you, Waukesha.
Absolutely. So, Luann, what was your big takeaway with all the doors that you knocked? The sentiment that you were hearing from people that you feel like carried over into what we saw with turnout and the election last night. Like, what was motivating people?
People were concerned about women's rights. They were concerned about the gerrymandered lines. But the doors that were the most impactful for us, because I always brought someone with me, were the ones that weren't quite sure because of the negative ads going out there. So all I had to do was tell them a story I know about Janet, and they were then realizing that they need to vote for her because Dan Kelly was just making all this stuff up. And it was great. I mean, I just had to tell one story, and then but then, I always would ask them, what is important to you in this race? And women's rights came up so many times. Really, the two were women's rights and the gerrymandered lines, and then the voting rights came up. And I would chime in that with a disabled husband, I was worried about what was going to happen to disability rights if this trend keeps going. So anyway, we had really good, I look back at just 95 votes, and I think I'm sure we contributed to that with all the door knocks we did. Both in
Doesn't
my
it feel good,
election
Luann?
and
Doesn't
in
it
this
feel?
election.
Doesn't it feel good to know that the effort makes a difference? Thanks so much for the call, Luann, and thank you for the work that you put in. Yeah, man, that's a good. I know, and also in Waukesha, Diane Voigt won for school board. I think there was 3 open seats, and she was one of the only left-leaning people who was running, and she won, which is great as far as continuing to push back on some of the Waukesha administrative decisions that has made national attention in recent weeks. I don't even think we've talked about that since you've been here with the whole Rainbow Land thing.
Oh no, I think it actually broke like the day I was here in a moment.
And then we talked about it the next day on
exactly.
Thursday.
Yeah. And Luann really brought up something very important. I think the Republicans would do right by themselves is spend more time knocking on doors. That's not something they did. Dan Kelly didn't knock on doors. He went to rallies and talked his talk, but he didn't knock on doors. He didn't have supporters doing that as much as Janet did. And having those conversations make all the difference.
Very exciting. We have a response from our texter from the 414 about the two dinners that were made because of nerves. And we're going to make you wait until the no sour ha one time power hour.
Oh, Jane knows how to drive ratings.
A tease. That is what we call a tease. All right. Well, we're going to take another break. We also have some other food news as far as, that Starbucks fancy oil-infused coffee may do more than just the coffee does to your digestive system. All right. This is As Goes Wisconsin. We'll be right back.
This is so good.
Why are you eating so much popcorn?
Well, I'm making a difference for Wisconsin schools, and I was able to easily shop online.
I mean, it does look yummy.
OMG, you've got to try this cheddar jalapeno.
It is good.
Oh, and I ordered a bunch of other gourmet flavors, chocolate delight, cookies and cream, and even dill pickle, delivered to my door. And I help Wisconsin schools in the process. Go to the Wisconsin Popcorn Shop at civicmedia.us/shop. That's civicmedia.us/shop. And order now. The shop closes April 10th.
Don't you deserve a job you'd love? Civic Media is preserving hometown radio, broadcasting from main streets across Wisconsin, and we're hiring radio advertising sales professionals to join our rapidly growing network of local radio stations. If you have a connection to your community, prior sales experience, and want to earn an outstanding living where you and your hard work is appreciated, you should apply right now. Find more information on our website, civicmedia.us. Click on the Careers tab.
If you can plan barbecues and weddings, you can plan to protect yourself from a natural disaster. Sign up for local alerts, prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Weather brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese and Popcorn Shop at civicmedia.us/shop. Home of buttery popcorn treats and make your mouth water. Tangy cheddar and jalapeno, dill pickle and Texas cheddar, and more. civicmedia.us/shop. Part of the proceeds benefit Wisconsin athletic programs.
We're going to start with one more call. Kristen.
On the Shaw. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times this afternoon.
We're going to start with one more call.
Highs approaching 70. Southwesterly winds 20 to 30 miles an hour. Mainly clear tonight. Lows dip down to about 29. Tomorrow, highs around 48. Mid-40s Friday. Much warmer on Saturday with highs in the upper 50s. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 64 degrees.
Bringing some sanity to the airwaves. The Shaw 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
I love coffee, I love tea, I love the jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the jive and me, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair, and Greg Bach is here because it's a Wednesday, and still taking your calls as we get people's reactions and feelings about any of the results from yesterday, from the top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket of your school boards. And we have a caller on the caller line right now.
Yes, we do. Fred from Wisconsin Rapids. Thank you for joining us, Fred. What do you want to say?
Oh, a couple of things, guys. What made us so excited last night was when Judge Janet personally thanked everybody, acknowledged them around her. And then what was kind of the cherry on the cake was when she invited, or they just rushed the stage, the 3 or 4 Supreme Court justices that supported her. We were blown away from that. The other couple comments I had, I hope that with the gerrymandering, maybe an independent voting commission will finally come about, like what we have in Iowa. And the other reason I'm really so thankful for this liberal court is I'm scared to death of what kind of shenanigans the Republicans will pull in the 2024 presidential election. So I'm really glad to see that we'll have a liberal court on board before that 2024 presidential election. That's my comments, guys.
Thank you so much for the call, Fred. And this is, I forgot to bring this part up. So Ali Alexander, who I didn't know before last night, but this was on Twitter, and he is a staunch conservative.
There are other words I would also use.
Do you know who this is?
I do.
Who is this person?
He was a big Stop the Steal organizer. I mean, yeah, he's been around, big Trumpster. He's been around a while.
So he tweeted something that then started getting screenshotted. I don't think he deleted it, but I saw it as a screenshot and someone saying the quiet part out loud, because he tweeted last night, "We just lost Wisconsin Supreme Court. I do not see a path to 270 in 2024.
Whoa.
Meaning he saw the path to 270 in 2024 through Wisconsin because of a conservative-leaning Wisconsin Supreme Court. Not because they would win the votes, but because they could potentially overturn the election like they tried to do, and we were one Supreme Court justice vote away from doing in 2020.
They could help with the shenanigans.
But I was, again, sometimes I think some of these true believers,
Wow.
And it was interesting. I talk a lot about the echo chamber, right? Of like trying to keep myself from getting too stuck in it.
Yeah.
Of going outside and touching grass, as the kids say, and not assuming that the reality that I hear back online, in my social groups, even on this show, is reality. And I think that was so, this whole world, even that whole word in concept even came up post 2016, of so many people, so many Democrats, so many left-leaning people who just assumed Hillary was going to win and did not realize the different pockets and huge parts of the country that Trump's message appealed to them. And I almost wonder if it's switched now. And that there is some conservatives who are so much living in their echo chamber that they do not see like reality as what it is, that this guy, Ali Alexander, thought this was like a kosher thing to tweet out, where everyone else sees it as like, that's not how it's supposed to work, right? It's not because you have a state Supreme Court
in your pocket.
That's how you win a presidential election. And like even Dan Kelly's concession speech, whatever that was,
graceless,
classless, a lot of emotion, and even the fact that he in that moment felt like, I can get away with saying this. And there was people in the audience yelling, "True that."
Yep.
True that.
And what they've created for themselves to just hear themselves and not realize that they are certainly not the silent majority, but the very loud minority, as proof by swing state after swing state after swing state rejecting MAGA-ism.
But even Kelly last night rejected his resounding loss. He got smoked by Janet Protasewicz, and yet his whole attitude was, well, it's because the other campaign lied about me. Not that they didn't like you. And they didn't
You're
like
just
your
not very likable.
Well, and they just didn't like your policies. That's the reality, sweetiekins.
And that's where I disagreed with Joe on the whole. Like, I get what he was saying with regard to walking back the statements. I think had the statements in the election been different, the message been different, and last night would have happened like, oh, okay, this is a different version. What we saw on that stage last night doing that speech was exactly what you saw in the commercials, exactly what you saw on Twitter, what you saw in his appearances.
On the debate.
In the debate. This was not I did not see any different in person. I was shocked yet not surprised. I was shocked that he'd say those things, but honestly, I wasn't surprised that he would do it because it's who he is. And I'm sorry. And it's a low point for him, but he could have handled it with 349, cut it off at 349 and say, good night, everybody.
Cut the mic.
Yeah, exactly.
Just someone who knows better. Being like, nah, come on, man. Or you're going to thank me.
Or get the hook.
Ali Alexander, I know who he is. I don't know him, but he's not just a Trumper. He is an QAnon dude. They're like this guy wants to shenanigans all over the election.
Is this a term? Are you just using this, or is this a reference to something
It's
that you keep saying?
It's been said a bunch of times today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm just bringing it back.
So I should be paying attention to my own show?
At least pay attention to me, thanks. Wow. Wow. That's my own Wilson. Wow.
Wow. All right. Well, we would still continue to love to hear from you.
Yeah.
But we're going to keep moving on. Probably still dabble in the election talk, dabble a little bit in some food talk. We got some brewer stuff. And we also have a guest, a Wisconsin resident who is an author who has just published his second book. We're going to be talking to James Bastian at 1:30 about his newest book, which is it's a sequel to his first book, Wisconsin Logging Camp, 1921. The new one's called Willa's Pursuit. They're both historical fiction based in Wisconsin, and he had to do a lot of research on Wisconsin history. So we will pick his brain about that at 1:30. But in the lead up to that, we still have some Starbucks news. I also have some news, maybe things that you'd be surprised about that does or does not go in the fridge versus the cabinet. One of them is molasses. I don't know the last time I bought molasses, but it's on the list. All right, this is As Goes Wisconsin.
A cup of dats and bosom.
Ooh, slip me a slug from that wonderful mug, and I'll cut a rug that's snug in a jug. Drop your nickel in my pot, Joe.
Taking it slow, waiter, waiter.